Recording in progress.
Good evening. I'd like to call this regular Board of Finance meeting for Monday, August 19th, 2024 to order. First item on the agenda, public forum. Anybody wishing to address the Board of Finance in public forum? Seeing none. Item number 2. Approve minutes of regular meeting minutes of July 15th, 2024. Do we hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or corrections?
I have a correction.
Please.
Bottom of page 3, last sentence, the was also. I think it should be there was also.
Mm-hmm. That was the only one I saw. Anybody else have any?
The only thing I would add would, on page 3, a little further up, under section 4, I just wanted to make it clear, Dr. Balistracci said at the end of June 2024, expenditures totaled for the month $9,450,006.13, which was 99.79% of the budget. So that when added to the rest, just to make it clear that that wasn't the total for the year.
Oh, for the month. Okay, gotcha.
Yes, yes. It was a very, very good job last year.
Okay. Any others? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? No. Okay. Item number 3, correspondence, standing building committee minutes. I did get a message from Chairman DeMayo that he was not going to be able to join us this evening, but any questions he asked me to pass along to him, so I don't know if anybody had any comments or questions regarding the standing building committee minutes of August 6th, 2024.
I don't. Go ahead, John.
I'll do them next month. I just had general questions about
General.
commissioning.
Okay. Which commissioning did that? Yeah, that was a new business item that was not discussed, right? The commissioning? Yeah. Which hopefully they will discuss it next month. At least that's, actually, no. That particular item is going to be on hold until the Baldwin HVAC project.
Which is what I was going to ask about.
Okay. Which is why? It's
It's been
Go
going
ahead.
on for a long time, like really long.
mm-hmm.
And I just sort of wanted to understand where we were and what the issues were.
Yeah, I'd have to go back in the minutes. I know that there were issues with having additional work
Yeah,
that needed to be done.
but it just seems like it's going on and on.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Linda, please.
I know that the project will be going to bid next week.
Mhm.
That was the last update I had on the project. I know there's been a number of delays and issues with the project, but it is going out to bid. Actually, it should be this week.
There was there was something in item 7 regarding the project noted. Mr. Gurnham noted that the bid for the additional work had to be put back out, and he's working with the town. So, do we know why? Well, I'm sure somebody knows why. Probably Cliff. Why it had to go back out to bid? Was
don't want to speak.
they were all over budget, or were there not enough, or something else?
Don't remember, but let me see if I can find out for you.
Okay. Fair enough.
My concern is that they're going to open school and they have to bring in additional heating and cooling elements for the school. And they've had heating and cooling issues there for a number of years. It's
Mhm.
just
Yeah, no, I agree.
kind of getting concerning.
Heating and cooling units for the start of the school year. Yeah, it's all dependent on temperatures, right?
Right.
We never know. So, all right. As Linda's trying to possibly get an answer for us, are there any other comments? Okay. All right, Linda. If you find out, we'll bring it up during the Board of Ed.
Yep.
Okay.
We'll let you know.
Great. Item number 2, correspondence pension committee minutes.
I got a question about that.
Sure.
I noticed that with the new contract for dispatchers, the matching's gonna go from 100 to 150%.
Yes,
Is there a dollar limit on that?
up to 8% of your salary. You can contribute up to 8%. We'll match dollar for dollar up to 12%.
And that's just the dispatcher?
Right now, it's just the dispatchers. That was part of our most recent negotiation.
Okay. Noticed that the pension fund's up about 8%, so that looked pretty good for the year. And looked like OPEB was up 19.7% if I did my math right, so that was pretty good numbers.
No, market's been pretty favorable, other than a dip about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Again, as always, we note that that's just a moment in time.
Right.
Right, true.
Yeah.
But it's a better moment in time than if it was 8% lower.
There you go.
Yeah,
Right.
We'll
it,
take that
Pretty
number.
good moment.
We'll take that number, Jonathan, yes.
it had the room to grow.
Yes. Well said.
Yep. Certainly did, yeah. So the, yeah, investment report, yeah, it's 5% month to month and 10% for the year, so. And we start a new year. Okay. Anything on either pension or the OPEB minutes report? Otherwise, we'll go to item 4, which is the governance communication from the auditors. That was just for record. I believe we all received that.
Yeah.
Sorry, what?
The governance communication from our
Yes.
auditors. This is just basically for record
Yes.
and correspondence. So we've all received it already. Nothing new, just for record. Okay. Anything else on item 4? Otherwise, we'll go to item number 4 on the agenda, which is review and accept the report of expenditures for the Board of Education. Dr. Balistraci, you don't want to come up too?
Good evening.
Can make a trifecta.
Jen can do her thing, but I'm here.
Jennifer's got it.
You're gonna have me 2 months in a row now,
That's
too, so.
Good evening. Linda Trudeau, Jennifer Baldwin. Good evening.
Thank you, good evening.
Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I have 2 reports tonight, as we always do at this time of year. One is for the end of the 2023-24 fiscal year, and then the second one is for July, the first month of the 2024-25 school year. So I'll start with the first report. Expenditures for the month of July 2024, ending the fiscal year 23-24, were $466,943.86. The expenditures and encumbrances through the end of June were 99.85% of the budget, as compared to 99.99% for the year prior. There was no revenue. Salaries and employee benefits were in line with last year. Purchase services, supplies and materials, purchase services, supplies were higher than the prior year. Capital and transportation were lower than the prior year. With everything said and done, at the end of the fiscal year, there's an unexpended balance of $103,228.48, which is just amazing again. And we said this the other night, that the work that Linda and her team does to come within 1% of the total budget, which is, I think it's what, $65 million or something along those lines. I mean, to come in within 1% is just incredible, and it's just, I'm in awe. But in terms of the warrants and everything, there was really nothing to point out. Just, you know, for the month of June, it was definitely running around trying to get in those last minute bills that some that were from 2023 came in and had to be paid. So it was just a lot of work, but they did a great job.
Right. Thank you. Linda, I also know that you had sent an email to the board earlier today. I don't know what time, I just took a look at it this afternoon, but regarding the account balance overages, if we had any questions to that. So hopefully everyone received that in case they had any questions. I don't know if there was anything you wanted, you know, this is basically closeout of the year for the Board of Education, so for 23-24. So
A lot of,
So,
the-
go
a lot
ahead.
of the things on that list were things that we've talked about over the year.
Mhm.
The planned unbudgeted expenses that we, because we knew going in that we had a surplus in medical, that we were able to do some of these things. The added positions that were needed, the state mandate for the textbooks and the special ed audit. But then there were a number of things that were unplanned that just ate up our budget.
I think,
That was-
yeah, no, and so the list is here of the items that were over, some of them substantially, some of them not so much. I think probably, I mean, one of the biggest questions I would have, but I'd have to look at the budget for 24-25 is, did we adjust based on these overages as we needed to? And I think in some of these, I do recall numbers going up during the budget to reflect the trend that these were going to be going above and beyond on
Some
the
did,
overages. So,
some were increased, some were not.
mhm.
And there's some that we are definitely going to have to take a look at the next budget because there've been trends on some of these accounts and we haven't been adequately budgeting for some of them. So it's something we will be looking at going forward.
Right. Did anybody have any specific questions regarding some of these line items? Again, the overages are, the total overages, it includes the planned, right, as well, so it's the total of both groups that we have here. So the overage was a little over 2.5 million, but offset by the savings in other categories.
Yes.
So just want to be clear for the public, if anybody ever got their hands on this, it's not 2.5 over budget, it's 2.5 on expenditure line items that were made up on other areas, so. And, to go to Jennifer's point, still coming in with the, unspent balance, so.
And as Linda's pointed out, we've discussed a number of these, none of this comes as a surprise. If it's site improvement or physical plant or some of the custodian stuff, it's something that's been ongoing. So it's, this is just a reconciliation.
You know, I didn't catch your email, I'm sorry, just too much going on during the workday. I was gonna ask you about a couple of them, but maybe we can put it off till next month, I don't know.
I was gonna say.
Check the email first.
So just see, I mean, a lot of these items, I actually went through and I did some cross-referencing just to, more so to see if they were the line items that we had all been talking about and seeing over time.
Just got a copy.
So when you take a look at this, Jonathan, I think you'll agree that I was highlighting the numbers here and I was like, yep, those are all items that we've been, even though it says unplanned overages, it doesn't mean that they just happened overnight. They were overages that had been occurring that we knew that we were at 90%, 70% through the year, and it grew from there. So the planned additions were not even a question. We knew right up front what those items were.
Right, the two biggest items for the unplanned overages were the special education contracted services, which we've discussed many times.
Yes.
And the building management expenses, which we've also discussed as these events have occurred throughout the course of the year.
And nobody doesn't know what's going on with electricity.
Right. Right.
Well, and just to add to that, the special education area, it wasn't just the contracted services, but the buses. So yeah, those two together, you're looking at close to, getting close to $900,000 on the overage, so.
But we did come in with a savings in tuition of over $500,000. So that's offsetting some of the contracted services.
Right.
For those expenses for the students that we brought back in district and didn't outplace them like we had originally planned on in the budget, those costs are offset by the tuition.
Right.
That was one of the other big areas of savings that we had that helped cover some of these additional expenses.
Just speaking on behalf of myself, I was very appreciative that you did provide this because it summarized things that, like Jonathan said, he had questions tonight of all these items that were over. So it just summarized it, which was good. I mean, you could have done the same thing with the areas that were saved. There were savings in them.
Right.
but that's what we have this report for. So it was just really taking a look at the two and summarizing it here, so.
But I think it was Dr. Balistraci, even last month, you alluded to the idea that there's some things that are trending that you're gonna have, you're aware.
We're aware, and as Mr. Joe said, right, that in some cases, as we prepared for next year's budget, we increased some of those lines, and in other cases, there are things that we within the district have to look at the spending there and change some patterns. So both of those things.
I was going to ask about Social Security and life insurance on the employee benefits section. Isn't that kind of more predictable? That was up pretty significantly.
Social Security has been one that has been off a little bit every year. And I tried to go back through the budget and figure out where I missed that one. So I'm hoping that the budget for this year, 24-25, that I've done a better job of trying to catch all the other pieces of, because not every employee pays into Social Security. So I can't just say, oh, salaries is this much, so I'm going to calculate Social
Okay.
Security.
Not that simple.
It's not that simple.
Gotcha.
And a teacher may not pay Social Security on their regular job, but if they do anything extra, like the ESY or tutoring, then some of those things, they
Are
do have
exempt.
to. So there's different things, or if they do co-curricular stuff, coaching or anything, then they have to pay it on that. So there's,
Somewhat fluid.
Yeah.
Yep. I was curious about dues too. Did we take on some new subscription, or dues went over a bit?
it was a dues that was originally covered under ESSER that we brought into the budget, and it was a bit, and then there's been increases on almost every dues that we pay. So it was a little bit from the ESSER one that came in to the budget, and that one had an increase, and then there were a couple other ones that had some big increases on the dues.
Okay. I think we've beaten the other ones up enough.
Anybody else have any, so this is just for fiscal year 23-24, so anything else in the financials of the well? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to accept the report of expenditures to the Board of Education in July 2024 that are attributable to fiscal year 23-24 in the amount of $466,943.86.
So moved. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions, recusals? Okay.
I have one question, not about what we just voted on, but just a status update. One of the items in the warrants was the chiller noise measurement. Any updates as to, has that issue been resolved for the neighbors to the high school, or are we working on it still?
Last I remembered, they're still working on it, but it's better.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not finished.
But
Okay.
I think they really need to get into the winter months and have it run at that time of year in order to do more noise testing and see if what we've done has mitigated the noise for the neighbors. So I think the testing that we've done now is good, and the neighbors don't have an issue with it, but I think we need to get through the next
I see.
season in order
When
to,
the leaves are down
Yeah.
and,
Okay.
yeah, and then the system's running at different times and more.
Okay.
So-
But it's a work in progress, but things.
It's going to be tweaked probably.
Yes.
Yes, I understand the work is done, but as Linda just said, there's some testing that has to wait.
Okay.
So the testing to date is coming back positively.
Great. Great. Thanks.
Okay, fiscal year 2024-25.
Okay. So expenditures for the month of July 2024 were $4,562,532.04. This represents 9.14% of the budget as compared to 9.48% of the year prior. There was just a small revenue of $318.40 for non-resident tuition. Salaries are expended in line with prior year. Employee benefits is higher than the prior year, but this is mostly due to the timing of certain payments, and the variance in workers' comp is due to the timing of payments. Purchase services is lower than the prior year. Tuition right now is the tuition, the percentage expended is higher, but again, it's due to the timing of payments. Supplies and materials are higher than last year. And capital, the percentage of the budget is lower than the prior year. And it all comes in with the capital leases. Transportation is in line with last year. The warrants that are submitted are $2,243,522.51. Again, this is a big budget because there's a lot of those upfront charges, the annual pension, OPEB, capital leases, annual dues, renewals, software, full-year salaries and summer employees. So, and the schools are getting their supplies for the start of the school year. So things are high right now, but then it's one-time expenses usually, and those will
Usually if the percentage
fade off.
was high last year and it's high again, it's, you know, in the higher range, pretty much know that's the trend. I only had, and I think they were answered, workers' compensation, professional technical services, and information services all appear to be running higher, but I think it's answered by timing of payments.
Timing of payments, and then
That was in your
also-
summary, so those
Yeah.
were the only three that I saw that were really, you know, sticking out a little bit.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
capital lease payments too for those, right?
Yeah, workers' comp was, so last year we had a different carrier, and it was our first time with them, so their billing was a little bit later. So that's the difference. I mean, we didn't make any payment to them in July of last year. What was the other ones you said?
Professional.
Information technology, right?
uh,
Something like that.
Sorry, I scrolled back.
Information services.
Professional technical services was up from 5 to 21%, and then information services was 4 to 43.
Right, so information services is due to the encumbrance that's there, and that is for the letter that goes out. Last year, we didn't do the purchase order in July, it
Oh,
occurred later on,
right,
so it's again a timing. So yeah, it's, they're all,
I guess I was just curious with the outliers, are any of them not due to timing? Looked like they were all kind of front-loaded departments or line items.
I mean, the only, we've had a lot of encumbrances go in for supplies and materials for the schools. Facilities has done a lot of their purchase orders for the year. So they put in purchase orders for all the testing that has to be done, all the requirements that have to be done. They do a big custodial supply purchase at this time of year, so there's a lot of front loading from them, and then some of their stuff is for the entire year. So that's why things like site improvement.
Safety,
well, safety and
sanitation's way
sanitation,
up.
yeah.
Well, it was 95% last
Last
year.
year, so.
80, was it 88 this year? So it's
Yeah,
front-loaded.
Mr. Gurnham is trying to keep it contained. And, you know, hopefully there won't be any surprises. We got hit with a couple surprises last year right at the beginning of the year. So hopefully, you know, we're gonna stay a little bit closer on that one, at least for now.
Okay.
Figured you'd know better than me, which ones are timing and which ones aren't.
Other questions regarding fiscal year 24-25 report?
More of just a comment. One, just going back to what we were talking about a moment ago on last year's budget, you know, when we're looking at the unplanned overages, substitute teachers were budgeted at $315 last year. The overage was just under $450,000. The total expenditures were just under $450, and in this year's budget, it's good to see that it's budgeted at $450 based on what your experience was last year. So
Yeah,
I just wanted to point out that there is.
That was one of the ones that we did increase based on the trend that we were seeing with the expenditures in that account.
Right.
I think we also increased special ed transportation. There were a couple other ones that
Substantially higher than
got
last year.
it, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Anything further? Okay. I will entertain a motion to accept the report of expenditures for the Board of Education in July 2024 attributable to fiscal year 24-25 in the amount of $4,562,532.04.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, abstentions, recusals? Great. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. See you next month.
Yes, see you then. Item number 5, review and approve the report of expenditures for town government. Same as Board of Education, we have the same setup where we'll go over fiscal year 2023-24 and then the next fiscal year, but only the warrants on next fiscal year. And I know we'll be up here for a little bit because there's a lot that we need to discuss.
There's a lot of things.
A lot of things, all good. So with that, we'll, I guess we could begin with revenue on 23-24.
Yep, so I will begin by saying these are unaudited numbers. As of June 30, we still have some adjustments that we need to make both on the revenue and the expenditure side, but there shouldn't be anything so much that would change the numbers so much. Sorry, I don't know what to do. So we're going to start with revenues. So as the end of June 30, 2024, we are showing a 1.8%, $1.8 million surplus, made up specifically of the accounts that we've talked about over the last few months. The selectmen due to sale of surplus items, finance due to interest rates, the building department due to their increase in fees and the amount of permits that they've had, working down to the fire department increase in calls, which we see on the expense side as well. Youth and Family Services, whose number of clients has not diminished since COVID. We're still seeing an increase there. And Park and Rec, who have brought in additional income, as well as some income from the state of Connecticut that we anticipated, bringing that to $1.8 million of surplus.
Good golf.
Oh, and golf, I'm sorry, Miss Golf. Golf, yes. Golf brought in more, and you'll see on the expense side as well. As the golf course has been used more, we have more revenue, and we would have more expense as well. I don't know if we've talked about all of these line items over the last few months. I don't know if you have any specific questions.
Just for clarification purposes, so I looked back last year real quick and I realized, so these reports are built up, they include the expenses or the revenue and expenses from July that are attributable. So, in other words, there's a difference. So we saw the June report, but now we've seen another June report with additional numbers. So there's a difference that we're approving tonight.
Correct.
Last year you gave me it. This year I didn't get it, so I did the math, so I meant to check with you. To make sure the number is correct, but you probably do have it. But not for revenue, I mean, when we get to expenses.
Correct. So
Because
as
on the summary,
items,
there's a difference between what we approved last month and then this month, which is, this is just edited to reflect the additional.
correct, because
Right.
we have items that are ordered in June, and the expense is actually paid out in July, but it is June 24 an expenditure. Or there's items that have come in for revenue, but we have billed them out for last year, again, attributed back to June 24. So that is why we have a difference from last month to this month. But we are closing we are closed out for 2024. This Saturday, we'll be doing a final close for the year, and we will, anything moving forward will be in 25.
Right. And we'll be talking about transfers and.
Correct.
later on.
So this year, this month, we have transfers that are attributed to the general fund, to close out the general fund. Next month, I keep saying years are crazy. Next month, I'll be coming back to you with additional transfers for other funds and for use of the surplus.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Any questions on revenue? Okay. Expenses.
So on the expense side, again, it should not be a surprise. We have the same four areas that we are over budget as of June 24. IT, the golf course, fire, and capital. All those items we've talked about over the last few months. They're attributed to either just usage or items that we have funded from, or we had budgeted from funds set aside from other areas, and you'll see that when we talk about the transfers later on in the agenda.
In this particular report, though, this is before
This
the
is before
transfer.
transfers,
Right.
and you see I did provide
you did.
another report that would show you,
Would show
if
what
you
it
were
would
to
look.
approve all of the transfers, what this report would look like, yes. And I'll just note that the selectmen did approve all of the transfers this morning, to recommend that you do so as well.
All right, pretty straightforward. Anything on the expenses? Okay, warrant, special fund warrant?
I have a question on the expenses, actually.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, I think, I might have saw two numbers, I gotta look back, but the BOE thought they had a surplus of 103,228.48. Slight difference on your sheet was 103, 195. Doesn't really, I don't think it really matters, but
It's a very small difference, but
Yeah.
Linda can explain that very easily.
So after I did the financials, I found a $33.09 adjustment that needed to be made. And so Mary Jane has the final number. Your report does not reflect the $33.09. I figured it was somewhat.
That's called the definition of timing.
Yes, yes.
So the 103, 195 that we are showing in our report is the final number
Yes.
from the Board of Education.
now, I guess this is like the $2 million question. With the savings we have in expenses and the surplus in revenue and the unexpended funds from the Board of Education, do you know a total number? Is it $2,127,653.48? Somewhere close to that?
Correct, so after, let's see what that number is. So I had about just shy of $1 million after the transfers that you would approve.
I mean, before transfers.
Well, before transfers, I have the $1.8 million in revenue and just the $158,000
Okay.
here.
So just to be clear, the subtotal for the town in terms of what was unexpended is 55,192.
Correct, before transfers.
So that's cutting it close too on the expenditures.
Correct.
In a good way. It's basically right on the budget.
Correct, although many of the expenditures were budgeted from
Right.
fund balance.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else on expenses? Warrants? Any of the warrants? I didn't have any. We also got we received the capital reports.
I do have one
The-
comment on the capital report that I would like to make.
Yeah.
You'll see that on the town's Fund 217, the FY12 and FY13 town property improvements and equipment acquisition account for $1.389 million is at zero. We will be closing that particular authorization out because it is at zero. There is no required motion made by the Board of Finance to close that out. So when you receive this report next quarter, this line item will be removed.
One thing that confused me, I don't know if it confused anybody else, but maybe it's just me. I was looking at the available balance and the fund balance. And so the differential is the available balance is what's left in the bond that was authorized. The fund balance is based on the revenue that comes in
Correct.
to offset that, correct?
Correct.
So when you're looking at fund balance and you see lots of, in parentheses, all these numbers that look like it's over, the available balance is really where we should be looking at what's left in the bond authorization.
Right, the available balance
I
is
started
what
looking at the fund balance. I'm going, wow, we're overexpended on a lot of these. And I was thinking, well, maybe we're getting grant money, or, which a lot of times we do on these. We get
Correct.
grant money or.
The available balance is what we have left to
But the fund
spend
balance
on
is
the
where your-
authorization.
The revenue is coming in from the
Correct,
bonds.
so we just went out to bond, as we
Right.
reported last month, for $5 million, so we have $5 million revenue coming in
Right.
that will be
And then that hits the
shown.
revenue received.
Right,
line.
you're not seeing that in this report, because this is as of June 30.
Right, right. Yeah, I got a little bit confused. I didn't know if
Mm-hmm.
anybody else did, but that was probably just by me reading it quick. And I said,
Correct.
oh, all right, so. But they all look, you know, they all still look healthy. There's still some projects that need to be completed, and
Correct.
I remember it used to be 3 or 4 pages long, so now we've gotten them down to
We're working on
a
reducing that,
workable
yes.
capital projects report. Or at least one that's easier to read. Anything else on either warrants, capital funds, or anything regarding fiscal year 2023-24? Okay. Before I entertain a motion for it, I just want to make sure, did you have a number for the differential that I should be?
It should be on, is it not on your report?
It was on last year, but it wasn't
Oh,
on this year, but
I can
it's
see
okay,
it's
I just did the simple math, which was subtract the 2.
It's the math, correct.
I had
Yep.
554,109.
That sounds correct,
Okay.
yes.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to approve expenditures of the town government for July 2024 attributable to fiscal year 23-24, sorry, in the amount of $554,109.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, abstentions, recusals? Okay, great. Fiscal year 2024-25, we are going to be approving the warrants. Again, on this one, I did what appeared to be, I hope, simple math of adding the 3 warrants together to come up with a number for the special fund warrant, and then the,
It's the general fund warrant that you're approving. It's just the one.
just the general fund?
Yeah, special funds are already.
Correct, it's just the general fund warrant that you're approving. So,
So that
490,192.10.
Got it. Thank you for the correction. Silly question, why are we not approving all of them? And we're just approving the general, not the weekly or the special fund, I guess I could.
Right, because the special funds are already appropriated through authorizations.
Right.
The general fund through our budget is what you have
Okay.
the authority over. So as you do each month, you're only doing the general fund.
Okay. Slight confusion on my end. Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing that's on here, so before we go to the, any kind of a motion, you put medical in here?
Okay?
Or medical was listed underneath fiscal, of course, under 24-25. So the only question I had was, obviously it's early, it's the first month, and in fact, it doesn't appear that anything catastrophic claims has been reported yet, because it's probably a month behind.
Well, I was unable to get the numbers
Okay.
from Anthem
Okay.
for the month of July yet.
Fair enough, it's
Right.
early.
Mhm.
The pharmacy rebates,
Correct,
Could
that
you-
is something new. I reported to the selectmen this morning.
yeah,
So we had some differences in what we were reporting for medical this year. One of them is additional pharmacy rebates. Every year through our admin account, we do receive some rebates, and they're just in that admin account. This year, we've anticipated an additional almost $900,000 of pharmacy rebates, which, in my opinion, is Anthem's way of bringing down their, we went out to bid. So, Anthem, this is Anthem's way of bringing their dollar amount down. So I have separated this out as a line item on this report so that we can track that. It's not a normal rebate that we receive every year. It's an extraordinary amount. So I'm looking to track that separately, because I'm not sure if we're going to be receiving that every year.
Which item is that?
This item here that says RX rebates.
Okay.
So we already do receive some, like I said, and they're already in the admin, but we chose to include this extra amount in our budgeted amount.
Is this
So
the rebate we talked about last month or the month before?
Yeah, I have the
about,
same question.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing because.
$150,000.
because you were talking about
No,
150 and then I saw
no,
these.
we
I
have
was like,
yet.
no, it can't be.
No, we have yet to receive that. That is a rebate on stop loss, on
Yeah.
catastrophic
Oh,
claims.
right.
That's, so we have a clause in our contract that if we don't meet a specific criteria, that they will reimburse us some catastrophic claims. We have yet to receive that. That will be over and above that number.
How will that be handled? Will it go into the medical surplus?
I'm planning to put it through the stop loss line, the stop loss column there.
Okay,
See it? Stop loss.
so it'll lower the ISR
Correct,
premium?
yes.
Will that affect our surplus?
Well, it will, it will
Carry
show
down
up.
to the bottom?
Correct, yes, because it's money that we're gonna receive, it's gonna be a revenue to us.
Okay, and
So
it'll
I-
be a 23,
so it'll increase.
24 revenue?
It's gonna be a 25 revenue because it's too
It'll
late
be
to
a
put it
25
into 24 at this point, right?
Okay,
We have not received specific numbers from the stop loss company, so I have not booked a receivable back from last year.
And
We'll be
23,
putting that
24 is
into
closed at this
25.
point, so.
The $150,000 estimate is just what it is, just an estimate.
Right. So the projection, there was a little bit of a deficit in medical,
Right, well, the other thing I want to note is
And
if you
then-
look at the very bottom,
balance and vision.
right, if you look at the
Yeah.
very bottom of this
Yes,
report,
yes,
we have a new vision program that we are offering our employees. We received a credit from Anthem, a wellness credit of $35,000. We have chosen to use that funding to provide our employees with a vision benefit. We are looking to keep track of that separately because although it's part of the medical fund, we are using that credit specifically for that particular benefit. So I'm showing that we received the $35,000. Employees are still contributing. You can see that, $324, and the expense for the month of July was $814. We are not assured that we will receive this particular credit year after year. As our first selectman reported this morning, it is his hope that if we continue to receive this, that this benefit may become free to our employees at some time. But at this point, we're keeping track of it separately so that we can segregate that out and keep track of that.
Great. Makes sense. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I have a comment about all this surplus,
surplus on, we're talking specifically about medical?
all of it.
Yeah,
So I did a little back of the envelope calculations over the last 7 years. And I came up with some numbers that I think are in the ballpark. Obviously, I could have grabbed, had numbers not add up the way they should, but I went through a lot of the board pack documents and tried to figure out what our medical surpluses were each year, what our budget surpluses were. And over the 7 years, I calculated that we charged the taxpayer $21,754,257 in tax increases, and we had $17,096,893 of surplus. And this particular budget cycle, I'm showing that we have a $2,024,424 surplus. And I just think got to do something to protect our taxpayers. We're over budgeting, and we're ending up with these surpluses, and it's never getting back to the taxpayer. So I want to propose that we return this $2,024,424 surplus to the taxpayer. I'll just put that in the form of a motion, that we return this surplus to the taxpayers.
Well, you're putting in for a motion, so I need to hear a second.
It's a good opportunity. Keep having these surpluses.
Well, there's still gonna be discussion, so I'm still gonna have discussion about it, because I don't think you bring up a motion. The motion doesn't carry, fails, but I think the discussions, how would you suggest that we give it back to the taxpayer? How would you like to do that?
I admit that would be difficult.
Okay, well,
I would leave that to our tax collector.
okay.
Give people a credit.
I would be curious how much it would cost us to go ahead and give a certain amount back to every taxpayer.
Or
In the
explain
form
to
of a
them
check.
how someone got this and someone got that.
Or whatever it is. I mean,
If
There-
it would
there's
gain
other- there's
support,
other-
if it
there's-
would gain support of the motion, we could subtract what the tax collector sees as their cost to provide that credit to the taxpayers.
well, like you said, it's challenging and difficult to be able to do that. And there are other avenues that also that we need to keep in consideration as well. So when we get these revenues and we get these expenditure savings, you know, you're saying you were saying the 21 and 17 were your two numbers over 7 years?
Yeah, and, you know, I think I'm somewhere in the ballpark here. I would love it if our finance director took a look at these numbers, but, you know, in good faith, I took some figures from the documents in board pack over the years, and it looks like about 22 million in tax increases and about 17 million in surpluses.
Well, like,
It's a lot of surplus.
and it's also, there's also a lot of areas where we are saving the taxpayers' dollars by committing funds and needing to keep an unassigned fund balance where we need to keep it. So we're,
And using
because
the
we're getting the
funds.
surpluses and the revenues, we are utilizing it in other ways that we don't have to go and get a 5% tax increase. And then we have valuations and assessments that go into that, and then that spreads things out differently. There's a lot of different factors that go into
I
it.
haven't seen any
So-
calculation like that. So you think if we didn't shore up a reserve account, we would end up with a 5%
Calculations
tax
in terms
increase?
of keeping a certain amount in our unassigned fund balance based on the budget and the committed fund balances we have to be able to utilize, like we're going to do this evening. We're gonna be doing some
I'd like to see it
transfers.
between 8 and 10. I know other people differ.
But that's
and
not our
would like to see
policy.
it
That's not our
higher.
policy.
Policy.
Right.
If you'd
Not-
like to,
not my
I
policy.
mean, if you'd like to see a different policy,
Well,
that's
Well,
different.
it's this
different.
board's
Yeah.
policy.
Our board policy has been, the board policy is what, 10 to 15?
Correct.
Right,
Yeah.
10 to 15. That's our number.
Mr. Chair, I think there's something a little wrong with the reasoning here. The supposition is that we take these surpluses every year and go out in the backyard and burn them, when in fact the money accrues to the benefit of the taxpayer going forward. So the next year's taxes don't go up as much, or the money is returned to the taxpayers either through the unassigned fund or through other applications. It gets utilized. It goes to the benefit of the taxpayers. It's not wasted. That seems to be your premise here. So if we were unlucky enough not to run these surpluses, we would just have to ask for more in tax revenue every year. The money does get
The
applied.
following year. The following year.
The money
our
does get
increase
applied.
would be higher.
Well, I certainly wasn't insinuating that we burn the money,
Well, I think.
but I think it's, you know,
that
it's
is the
put
insinuation.
in sometimes in the reserve account in a way that is far too conservative, where we're keeping a lot of taxpayer money on the sideline for insurance. And admittedly, I want to have two months in the bank or what have you, but
I'm the first to tell you.
it's a lot of money to
right,
sideline
Right.
for the taxpayer.
I know.
And then some of the money is just spent on other projects. I mean, we've transferred money to different
have to-
projects.
that'd have to get done anyway.
Other projects that would ultimately need to get done.
And I've spoken up when we've done that. I didn't think that was right, because those projects should go through the budget cycle, and that kind of spending should get approved up front. But, I had a
But
difference of opinion with the board.
But either way, those projects are going towards improving the quality of life in the town and doing it using funds that we already have and not adding it on to next year's budget for the taxpayer to pay through a tax increase.
Well, we're not burning it, but
The
to
money's
say
put to
that
good
it
use.
benefited the
And I would
taxpayer,
just- I would just add
maybe
that
not as much as having it in their pocket.
The selectmen review our capital plan every year, and many of the items that are spent from our fund balance come through that capital plan, and they make a conscious decision to choose to use the fund balance for those items as opposed to taxing the taxpayers for those additional items.
Or bonding.
So, or bonding, right. Matt can
Mr.
certainly.
Chairman, in a few minutes, you're going to see an explanation that Mr. Trotta would probably appreciate. And he will see the use of committed funds and fund balance to pay for things that we would normally have to tax the payers to pay for. It is part of the regular process of governing and funding over a longer period of time. You also suggest that we've got too much money sitting on the sidelines. A month and a half ago, I met with the rating agencies, with Mary Jane and our financial advisor, and they specifically cite things like having committed fund balances for projects that might not be, might need to be done without further burdening the taxpayer. They talk about our fund balance policy, our unassigned fund balance policy, at between 10 and 15%. There are discussions that it should be 15 to 20 amongst the rating agencies and the financial professionals in municipal finance. You don't like that much money being set aside, but that's really not that important. We are adhering to the best practices and advice of the municipal financial experts throughout the country. Also, there's some surpluses that have been created in the employee health care account. You may recall that this board, as well as the Board of Selectmen, approved a transfer of $2.5 million out of that fund for OPEB benefits. Those dollars are going back to the taxpayers, or will go back to the taxpayers once we have built that OPEB trust to a level that it can sustain the payment of medical benefits for our retirees and not have to pay for it out of our pocket every year. So this money has been, as was also echoed at the table, has already been put to work for those very same taxpayers that you want to take care of and that everybody at this table wants to take care of. And I dare say there isn't anybody at this table who wants to take taxpayer dollars out of anybody's pocket that don't need to be taken out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So obviously I don't agree, I don't
You
believe that.
don't agree with the
that
industry
level
professionals.
for the unassigned fund is
You don't
required.
agree, right, you're saying you don't
And
agree with
then
the industry professionals.
I've had conversations with a representative at Fitch Rating Service, and they said 8 to 10% of an unassigned fund is.
Would you get me the name of that individual, and I'll be happy to call him and
I
validate it.
could find it.
Please get it, please get
I
it.
got to dig it up though, because
Be happy to validate.
it wasn't super recent, but he said that 8 to 10% was conducive with a AAA bond rating.
Well, it's a component of a bond rating, John.
Component.
It is one component of a bond rating. But it
Component.
also happens to be one of the stronger components.
And then the OPEB trust fund is difficult for our current taxpayer because they get burdened with trying to build up an account to probably $35 million so that it can earn enough interest to pay approximately $1 million of OPEB.
Look at as a
Cash
long,
payments per year.
look at that as a long-term investment for the financial health of this community that will pay off for generations, not generations because, well, yes, possibly generations to come in terms of the OPEB benefits. So yes,
long-term effect is
yes,
to put
Jonathan, there's a bit of a
$30+
sacrifice.
million of taxpayer money, again, in a fund managed by the town.
Over time.
Right, so you would
it
rather
builds up.
us continue to go, pay as you go, than fund the OPEB? Is that what you're saying?
How long have we been doing pay-as-you-go?
Since, excuse the expression, since Christ wore knickers. That's the way we've been doing it for years. But it's about $1 million now on the healthcare retiree costs? In the numbers, which is part of the healthcare benefits you guys just looked at. So it's part of that base. We'll be able to take that out of the base once we get the OPEB benefits to a point where they will fund those healthcare costs.
So once we get the taxpayers to give us $35 million, we won't have to have them pay the $1 million.
Well, instead of going year to year to try to do all this, we're doing long-term planning. We want to have a plan in place
And then
over long-term rather than be scrambling every time we need to pay something like that.
Isn't there any shock at all that we've had approximately $22 million of tax increases and
None.
$17 million of surplus?
No,
Voters have approved it, Jonathan.
no.
That's a pretty large ratio of surplus over the increases. Three
Not
out
when
of
it's
the seven,
allocated
three out of the 7
appropriately.
years, the
Not when
increases
it's
weren't even
allocated-
necessary at all.
But it's all employed
That's
to the benefit.
hindsight, Jonathan.
But it's all employed to the benefit of the taxpayer.
Well, it's not hindsight that we have a surplus now, so why not return it?
For the same reason we've just been talking about. You just did a circle.
So
You want to drain it,
So your-
you want to
your
drain
main
unassigned
reason
fund
is
balance,
to
you want
have
to
the
drain committed
unassigned
fund balances? You
fund
don't want
balance
to put anything in there?
percentage of our total budget be at 15%.
Between 10 and 15%.
Between 10 and 15, what?
Can you tell us where we are now? I thought it was 11 or 12.
12, I was going to say somewhere between 12 and 13.
I would say we're there, but that's me. I mean, maybe you wanted
Guess
12
what
and a
we're
half,
using
I don't
tonight?
know. But I'd say we were there
We're using
anyway.
unassigned fund balance.
I think 10 is enough,
So,
but
you
if you
know,
want between 10 and 15, we're there.
We get to use some of it tonight, so. it's your
Can I
luck- it's your
suggest that
lucky
we
night.
move on to that piece of business?
I would love to. However, first, there needs to be a motion regarding the
Warrants.
warrants for 24-25.
Well, I appreciate the discussion.
Very welcome. Motion, I'm reading my notes here that are incorrect, so I've got to look at the different numbers. So I'll entertain a motion to approve expenditures in the fiscal year 24-25 warrants totaling an amount of $490,192.10.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Recusals? Okay. The long-awaited item number 6 now. Okay, discuss and take possible action on end-of-the-year transfers to close out fiscal year 2023-2024. So we have all of the information in front of us. So the biggest difficulty I had, because I was trying to figure out where everything was going, was which correlated to which. So if anybody has any questions, I did it. I figured it out. I'm sure you all did too. But because there's committed fund balances from 6 different funds that are being transferred to department overages in several categories. And then there's an unassigned fund balance amount that is then also being transferred to other areas. So I didn't know if you planned on going through that. I didn't necessarily plan on going through it unless anybody had a specific question. For example, where's the unassigned fund balance going to then? Or where's Safe Streets? But some of it is self-explanatory and some of it not so much, but I did.
I can give you as much detail or not as you'd like.
Does anybody have questions regarding the transfers from committed fund balances, which again are funds that we have committed for use in this way for overages, or the unassigned fund balance amount?
I do, and I'm sorry, because I did get a little bit confused about this transfer. So within the budget revenue, we've got the surplus, and then in the expenses, we even have a small surplus.
Correct, but this isn't surplus. So
Well, let me finish the question.
hold on, just, if you let me just.
Preemptive.
I'm not saying a word.
Yeah, so, tonight's transfers are specifically related to balancing the general fund expenditure. Next month, I'll be coming back to discuss transfers from other funds and the potential of moving surplus into other committed funds. So it's a 2-step process for us. So this is specifically balancing the general fund expenditures, which is why I provided an updated expenditure list, which would be after, if all of the transfers were approved, what the expenditure budget would look like.
And just to make sure I'm clear, we're all clear. So because the 566 that we're talking about is being used because those, for example, golf, fire, there was another one here,
It's
police vehicles.
Golf, fire, and police vehicles, exactly right.
There's no committed, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no committed
Correct.
funds that could be allocated to those. So we have to pull from somewhere to
Correct.
offset
So we have money
The
that will
overages.
fall to
So we're-
undesignated fund.
So we're
and
taking
we
out
are
of unassigned
using
fund
it-
balance,
correct.
and then we're gonna take whatever from 23, 24 and put it back in.
Exactly right.
And then we're gonna look at how we could
And all of
allocate
the
it.
other dollars have specific committed funds applied to it.
That we were able to use and
That I've
put
tried
them
to
in.
explain month over month, as we went along.
Right.
So,
So this is my question though, and I'm sorry, I'm probably still confused,
okay.
but maybe you're just not allowed to do what I'm thinking of in my head. But that is that if we have a surplus, couldn't we just do enough transfers from the ones that are above water to the ones that are below? So we should have enough to cover.
we absolutely could do that. That is one option. The reason that I prefer to do the transfers this way is, again, going back to the rating agencies. We talked to the rating agencies about the reason we put this money aside. We put this money aside for specific projects. When we do those projects, we should take the money from those committed funds. We want to show that we are putting the money aside and we are actually using that money.
And
We're
not letting it sit on the
and
side.
not just letting it sit.
And wasting away.
Right. In the end, if there's a surplus, that money comes down to undesignated fund, and if we choose to take that surplus and apply that to other committed funds, that's fine. But you're right, Jonathan, we can do that. This is a way that I am solidifying the commitment that I've made to the rating agencies as to why we're putting this money aside. We have specific, the selectmen have specifically allocated these funds, this expenditure out of those committed funds. We should take that money out of those committed funds to show that those expenses have been set aside for that purpose.
And the committed funds are fairly funded by surpluses.
Correct.
So
Correct.
it's semantics. It's just a two-step process instead of what you
It's
suggest.
just a shell game.
It is a bit of a shell game.
Please don't use the term
It's not a
shell
shell
game.
game.
We're talking about the town of Guilford's governmental finances.
If we didn't have these surpluses, we would have to be going back to the taxpayers for $1.6 billion to cover these
Exactly.
costs this year.
Correct.
So.
Correct.
No, we don't, because we have a surplus
Right.
within the budget. We could transfer.
If
it.
we did not have, if we didn't have the surplus. if we
Yes,
didn't
yes,
have-
of course. If we didn't have a surplus, yes, of course.
Right, so
But we
think
do
about
have a
that.
surplus of $2
Think
million.
about that conversation, that would be much harder than.
When we met with the rating agencies, and Matt can confirm, I spoke to them about these committed funds. I spoke to them about the use of the committed funds and how we are using them. This is how we're using them.
It's better to
It's-
have committed funds than to not have committed funds, because it's showing you're
Correct.
allocating it. To
But it's
take
also
off
better
shell
to
game, we're
use
not
those.
using shell game, it's allocation.
It's
how you
better to
allocate
use
the
those
funds.
committed funds for what their purpose is.
Right.
Otherwise, the money is just sitting there with no purpose. My transfers provide to you a purpose for those
And a
funds.
transparency,
Identify, yeah, it's identified.
and a transparency.
But I am just presenting these the way that my office is making a proposal. If you choose to do something differently, that is certainly your prerogative. But this is the reason I am doing
I would
it.
suggest that you don't, Mary Jane. You just received what? The 23rd or 24th Excellence in Financial.
27th, but who's counting?
Award for Financial Reporting Excellence by GFOA.
So the benefit is the accounting to say that these
Correct.
accounts lost money or did not have the revenue we expected. So we had to make up for it. And there's visibility to that.
Correct.
But theoretically, hypothetically, because we haven't decided, but most of the time surplus money will fall to the unassigned account. Anyway.
It's always going to fall to the unassigned account, and it's going to stay there
Until it gets
unless the
allocated.
selectmen and the Board of Finance choose to move
So
that money
which
into
By
some other
doing it
committee.
in a two-step process, though, you have the visibility that these
It's
accounts
the
fell
transparency
short.
that I prefer
and
from
these
my
accounts
office.
were
You have a
plus,
trail, a
so
paper
Correct.
trail.
Money will come out, theoretically, money will go back.
And you
Correct.
can't pre-promise a surplus that may not appear. You can't commit in advance.
Right. So when we say we're going to use money for, Long Hill Road, if we've set aside money for Long Hill Road and we've put that aside in committed funds, and I have expenditures for that project, I should be taking it out of that funding. That's my opinion.
Which would be
I
the
follow
road
you.
projects
Yeah.
fund.
And I appreciate the explanation.
And when the time comes that you need to present this to the ratings agencies or the auditors, it's easier for them, who may not be familiar with the Long Hill Road project, to say, oh, it's a road, and lo and behold, there's $30,000 coming from the road project fund to
Right.
cover that expense. Instead of having to go back and say, well, in 23, 24, we had a surplus, and we just decided to use that surplus and apply it in these various ways.
Because when I come to you, and I come to you next month, and and you should know over the past few years, at least since I've been here, when I come to you for a transfer in those committed funds, I tell you, these are the projects that we're looking for those funds. So when those projects come to fruition, my integrity is to come back to you and say, these are the projects I recommended coming into this fund, therefore now we should be taking it out.
And importantly, we can explain that in a relatively easy manner to people who aren't as familiar with these projects as we are, so that when they look at it, they can say, oh, the folks in Guilford have created a mechanism that allows us to review what they've done and look at it and say, okay, they've set aside these 7 funds for these various things, and when these various things come along, they're taking money out of those 7 funds to apply it to those things, and they don't have to guess where we're getting the money
Correct.
from.
And if I'm putting money aside and never using it, that's just not good financial
over
planning.
taxpaying.
That's just not good planning.
Right.
So I think I'm gonna answer my own question, but on the committed funds, the one question I did have as I went through this and I was done, and I said, okay, this all makes sense to me. How much do we have left in the committed funds? Is that coming to us next month?
I can provide that next month, yes.
Well, and I was thinking that if next month you're coming to us to talk about fund balances and transfers and allocations, then you might have that already being prepared or planned to have the committed funds. What do we have left?
Right, so I'll tell you on my spreadsheet, when I have columns over here that says how much my balance is and how much is left.
Yeah.
But, so I'm keeping track of it, because
Oh,
first
I
of
know-
all,
I know you are.
I can't overexpend.
Right.
If you tell me there's 500,000, I can't spend 501.
Right.
You know, so I'm keeping track of that as we go along. And I think this year, Matt, is it what, page 50 this year is the page to put? You know, so if you look in your audit,
Yeah.
you know, my Bible is that list of fund balances that I always go through in our audit, and that, you know, those are the numbers we're looking at. And
Okay. I didn't know if you were gonna have that for us next
I
month, but.
absolutely- I absolutely
But you
can.
could have it, but I didn't know if you were gonna have it anyway because of but if we could get a
Absolutely.
balance of those
Absolutely.
next month, that'd be great. That was the only other item I had on that. So, to go to that point, I was going to go ahead and entertain 2 motions. I think last year I did it all once, but just.
I think the selectmen did it in one motion this morning, but it doesn't
Yeah,
matter. It
it's
doesn't
all-
matter.
It's all part of part of it was because, it's balancing this year, right? It's closing out the account,
Right.
it's transferring money and allocating.
So the top
The-
part
the-
is
the bottom
closing,
part
is
about
balancing
moving
anything that's
to next-
overdrawn,
to-
right?
To
Yes.
next year, so we can
Correct.
continue to use it, which is why you say carried forward. So
Correct.
that's why I had separated them, but
Absolutely
at
fine.
the end of the day, I don't think it really matters, but.
Absolutely fine.
So, does anybody have anything else on the upper part of the sheet regarding the transfers? Okay. So, with that being said, I'll entertain a motion to transfer $1,641,788 for fiscal year '24 from committed fund balances and unassigned fund balance to close out various department accounts as outlined by the finance director.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Second half of the sheet. We'll discuss that. This is simply exactly, I know you could explain it just better than I could, but it's just moving things to carried and forced to use next year.
Correct. So the bottom portion is items that were unable to be completed in '24. If you remember a few years ago, we used to just issued purchase orders, and you didn't even notice that it was just done. But the past couple of years, we are utilizing carried in force. We specifically, the department heads request that these items be carried because they were unable to complete them in 2024. They are moved to carried in force for those specific items. They can only use it for that specific item. If they're looking to buy a F-250, they're buying an F-250 in the new year, unless a request comes through the selectmen to make a change. So these are all items that were unable to be done in FY25. A lot of these items are already being worked on for this year, I mean, I can discuss if anybody has any specific line item that they want to ask, I can certainly speak to them, but we are moving them to the new year. We do request that the department heads use them as quickly as possible.
Okay.
That
was going to be part of my question is, there technically is not a time limit to use it.
There isn't, and we do have...
ASAP is better, but it's not a time limit. And then my question revolving around that was, is there anything, or can it be, that you carry in force over year?
Once you put it in carried in force...
Was there anything from the previous fiscal year?
Once you transfer it into carried in force,
Yes.
it is there available for use year over year.
It is.
We do have some old items. For example, we have been working on the carpet replacement for the town hall for many years. We budgeted that a number of years ago, but because of asbestos issues and we've yet to been able to get that project going. That money is still sitting and carried in force. But those are the exceptions. Everything else we try to use. My staff is very good at providing the departments with this information, making sure they use this money first before they go into their next year's budget.
Right. And it would seem, well, why not just cancel the 809 and just not carry it, and although you didn't use it, but then if you cancel something you might use 2 years down the road, you're gonna have to ask taxpayers for it again.
Right.
So you're just gonna have to go right back to
It's really case-by-case
rebudgeting.
basis.
So it's just moving it down until it can finally get
Right.
used.
Like I said, there's those exceptions that are still in
Yeah.
there, like I give you the carpeting.
And you don't want to engender a use it or lose it culture. So people rushing at the end of the year to make mistakes,
Right.
push the money out the
Right,
door.
good point.
You know, yeah.
So the selectmen this morning, did request that the department heads start to work on their capital projects a little earlier, so that at the end of the year, maybe we're not at this point. But one of our department heads reported this morning, he's on this list, that he's been working over a year trying to get the vehicle that he has on this list. It's not that we're not doing our jobs.
Supply.
Some of the time, we're just not able to get the equipment.
Right.
And that's what you see on here. I will note that there is a significant amount of public, park and rec carryovers. A lot of it has to do with the transition from a new director. We did tell her not to rush to get this work done, make sure she knew what she was doing, what she was getting. As the first selectman noted this morning, we tasked her with using her ARPA funds first, so we can get that money done before this. So normally you would not see that amount of money from Park and Rec, but because of that transition, we have that here
I
at
have a
this
question
point.
about these transfers.
Yep.
Are they all transferring to items that have an existing appropriation for 24, 25?
No, they
Some are
are.
going to be,
They
There's
are
no line item for
transferring
them?
like for like. They are moving, we have a separate fund specifically for these items. So if the building department is looking for a vehicle, and if it was in 2024, in 2025, it's a building department vehicle for that same amount of money, in a separate fund set aside just for
I'm
this.
just saying, there's no fresh appropriation for the same vehicle.
There is not.
You know,
It's
was
the
he like,
same
oh,
appropriate-
we didn't buy it in 2020, 23, 24, so I want to buy it in 24,
Well,
25.
that's what it
so-
is, but it's the same appropriation.
Yeah.
It's the
So
same.
we're not
Right.
doubling up on the
No, you
appropriation.
didn't use it in 2024, we're just using it in 2025. It's just giving us the ability to expend it in 2025, because we're not allowed, if we have an expense in September. That goes back to June. By my GASB rules for auditing, I have to put it back to June. You're providing me the authorization to spend it in '25 instead of '24, that's all.
Okay, but he didn't put in a request to
No,
buy the
there's not a
same
new one, no.
F-150 or whatever.
No, it's
for
at, it's the
24,
same,
25. Okay, I
same
see.
dollars.
All
You're
right.
just, instead of cutting a check in June, you're cutting a check in September.
The only negative possibly at all is when you carry this over and there's escalation, right?
It happens. It
And
happens.
something you budgeted for 15, maybe now is 20.
We
Well,
had that just this
and-
morning at the.
And that happens too.
One of the items on your list here, we'll
Oh, there
talk
is
about.
one
the-
already?
Yeah, the town properties vehicle for
Yeah.
$42,000. He spent over a year trying to get this vehicle. He spoke about that this morning. I think it's at 68. So we appropriated additional ARPA funds to cover the difference, so that we didn't have to come back to the taxpayers. But yes, because if you remember, these numbers that you're looking at here were put together
Probably
2 years ago.
Yeah,
You
not
know,
last year.
we're putting this together, we're putting it together in November, not to spend till July. And then
then
now
a
it's
whole nother
already
year.
another July. So we're, you know, it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's almost 2 years later that we're spending this money. He was unable to find the vehicle that we needed. We could have gotten a larger vehicle or a smaller vehicle that he discussed this morning, but in order to get the vehicle that was appropriate for our use, it's just available now.
I think I want to ask this
That's okay.
question a different way, but, so Public Works, right, they thought they had an estimate for 23, 24 season for salt.
Right.
Didn't they come up with an estimate for 24, 25? And now you're, with carryover, they're going to have a much larger
Correct, they're gonna
appropriation.
have more money. So in if you remember, this past winter was mild. So this winter coming up, our budget is based on an average of what we've done the last few years. If we have a bad winter, we're gonna need every dollar of this salt. But this money can only be used for salt. If it's not used for salt, then it goes back.
Right.
You know what I mean? But if we have a bad winter and your budget that we've put in for '25 is not enough, thank God for this money.
It's like a
That-
bond,
you know,
it's
that's
like
what
anything
this
else,
is.
like a bond authorization. You're
It's-
authorized to use it, but at the end of the day, we don't need it, or we can't find it, and then it just goes
It's
away,
gotta
then
go
it
back.
then it
Is
goes
there any
back.
sort of
We will
expiration
use
for
this,
that?
we will use this salt money first. If the money in the '25 budget is not needed, it goes back into the undesignated fund, or we ask to reuse it next year. But
Mhm.
we will always use this money from '24 first.
Right.
I'd still rather have you give it back to the taxpayer.
Of course you would.
That's fine, I'm just explaining what I'm proposing today, that's all.
Excellent. Okay.
Any other questions on any specific line items?
I didn't have any, does anybody have any? If not, okay, I'll entertain a motion to transfer $809,740 from various department line item surpluses to assigned fund balance carried in force for future use in fiscal year 24-25 as outlined by the finance director.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Abstentions? What? Never mind. I just can't. Item number 7, community
Thank
report.
you.
Committee report. I'm going to stop. I shouldn't entertain it, but you're opposed to moving funds that have already been allocated so that the departments can't use it?
You
You want to give it back, you want to just give it back to the taxpayers and then
not.
ask them for it again?
Sometimes it'll work if there's not a fresh appropriation, but sometimes in effect, you could like double the salt budget for the Public Works when they really made an estimate for that season and said, this is
Well,
how
if you've
much I
got a
need.
crystal ball, and then.
I don't have a crystal
fantastic.
ball, but that's their estimate, and the taxpayer wasn't really in line when they approved the budget to say, oh, I want to give them double that, or, you know, X more. basically you're spending the surplus on more salt that you might not even
You're
need.
spending you're delaying spending allocated
They haven't
funds
gotten around
that
to
have
spending
already
it
been,
yet.
that have already been budgeted and already been approved by the taxpayers. And if
No,
you're saying, well,
no,
the taxpayers don't know exactly what that's
24-25
used for, then
appropriation-
that's their own
The
fault.
24-25 appropriation was approved by the taxpayers.
And the
Not-
23,
not
24
this-
that are being moved
Not
were
this-
approved by the taxpayers.
Not this
as well.
transfer. This transfer is our prerogative.
No, you don't understand. You're just not understanding.
I just
I do
can't.
understand.
Let's go.
Can we move on to committees?
Number 7, committee reports. I'm sorry, sometimes I have to question certain things. Building permits, anything? No? Okay.
Nope.
Number 8, old business? Any old business? Yes,
So I have an answer for you on the Baldwin project.
yes.
So Mr. Berger said the cost came in double what the budget was on the first bid, so they are going back out to bid. I don't know specifically what modifications or clarifications they put in the bid document on the second round.
Okay.
But it is going back out to bid this week. He said ideally, if we can get one unit done, that would be the goal. The other we would review and schedule as the schedule would be determined. And he said it is for a section of the building and they will have heat when the heating season starts. So they're not concerned about any delay in the project, not having heat involved.
They will have heat,
They
but
will
is
have
the,
heat.
is it existing heat, or do we have to
We will
rent
have- we will have
heaters?
one unit, the goal is to have one unit in place and running, so that it will provide heat in that section. And then they will finish the rest of the project as soon as the schedule permits, whether it's over a winter break or another break. But they will have heat appropriate in the building.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And they probably won't need heat. I mean, hopefully if they get it in, they won't need heat probably until, September. You could pretty much get through. October is where you
Yeah,
start
we
getting
get
questions.
cold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, okay, thank you for that. Anything else under old business? Yeah? Old business?
So there was a request from the auditors, from the members of the Board of Finance for background information.
That is old business, yeah.
Okay, so I've received from some members of the board and not all. I'm just hoping everybody received my email. If you choose not to provide that information, if you could just please let me know. If you haven't responded and can provide that information, if you could please do so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
They said they're asking for $3,500.
Well, they're getting their $3,500 worth there, Bob.
Can I just go on the record to say that I highly object to the request?
I know, I was almost afraid to bring it up.
I know.
Maybe they're getting even.
I can only,
Yep.
I can
Just
only
the way
make the
I feel.
ask because it's.
I
been
did
asked of me.
provide the information. I just,
I know, but I just have to ask.
you have a job to do.
Yeah.
I
I have a job to
appreciate
do.
that.
Yeah. Don't shoot the messenger.
Nope, that's right.
Even though I got shot.
I know, I was cranky that day.
It's all good, but I just need to have some response from everyone, whether they're not providing it or providing it.
Okay, thank you. Will do. Item number 9, new business. I don't know if it should come under new business or public forum, but we do have a guest in the audience.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I figured,
I'm so sorry.
how can we let her sit here through all of this and not at least introduce her, get an introduction or something?
Oh my God, that is absolutely my fault.
And don't worry, it's the end of the meeting. At this point, everybody's
I know.
turned off, so.
I am so sorry.
No, please.
Absolutely my fault.
We'll put this under new business. How's that?
Veronica is here. She is our intern for the summer, and she was assigned to finance today. So she had the pleasure of attending the Board of Selectmen's meeting and the option of coming this evening, and she chose to come to your meeting this evening.
Well,
So
thank you for being here.
Thank you for letting me come.
Yeah, we haven't.
Oh, we let you come every month. You just come on.
We share the same name.
There you go.
No, I
There
saw
aren't
that.
many of us.
Gotta stick together.
I am so sorry. I know.
No, all good.
I
Well,
should have introduced her as part of my presentation.
Well, hopefully you're obviously learning a lot. You're learning from the best, so that's
Yeah,
great.
Indeed.
It's
Where are
fantastic.
you interning from? Are you a student or?
I'm a senior at the high school.
Excellent.
Oh, nice.
We have,
This- this-
every year, this is our 5th year that we have an intern from Guilford High School that comes and participates in our program, and we take our intern and we, to all the departments throughout town, so they get an overall view of everything that we do in town government, in the hope that maybe someday we can get them to come. Yeah, Future finance director. I don't know, after
Future
today-
first selectman.
After today, she may not want to be finance director, she just, her day happened to fall on a day I had meetings, so I brought her along with me, and I apologize for not introducing her
All
at
good.
the beginning. I meant to do that.
No problem.
We
Thank
put
you.
this program in place in 2018, and all, save for 1 year, which was the first COVID year, we've had it's traditionally a rising senior, give them exposure to governmental operations, as opposed to giving them one project to do over the course of the summer. We found it to be much more valuable to expose them to the variety of things that government does and offers to support the residents. And we're thrilled to have this program in
Great.
place.
Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Too bad you weren't here a couple months ago. Had the meetings were going like that.
I was running them.
She doesn't let me forget either. Anything else under new business?
How we go to how we doing?
How we did?
Oh,
Well,
look at that. I did pretty good, huh?
okay, item number 10, public forum.
Bring it.
Seeing no public forum. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Bob, you can burn it if you want.